Tonight, I drunk. I knew.
Hey there, YouTube. SkepticalRoot. Culture, cultural appropriation, and why it's all kind of hokey. Culture in itself, as my note here says, culture is shit. And by that I mean that culture doesn't necessarily have any intrinsic value in it. It is a waste product of the interaction of individuals. Looking at encyclopedias and dictionaries and anthropologists and sociologists, the broad definition of culture is the way that people in a group interact with each other. It is not necessarily about traditions per se, but it is about their traditions of how they do things. So, for example, you have, meal times. In England, I believe the traditional meal sets are different than they are in the U.S. U.S. with 3 squares, and the English throw in tea and supper, and the French have long meals, sometimes being an hour or two, sometimes more, with multiple courses of very small portions, and all those kind of fun stuff. Where the Germans are not quite as the Americans. The Americans are large portions, eat it, get it fast and eat it fast and get on with your life kind of thing. But these are all elements of culture. And what we should be doing with culture is looking at culture and saying, hey, these things are good, these things are bad. Let's take the things that are good and apply them to ourselves. That in itself, some people might consider cultural appropriation, but guess what? Too bad. If there is a better way to screw in light bulbs and somebody comes up with it, we should all be doing it. That just makes more sense. We should all be doing the things that are better than the way that we do things. When we come up with something that is, I'm just going to go back and say that we come up with a way to do things better, but that's it. But what does that leave with the flotsam of the things that we don't take? Dress and behaviors and idioms and things like that. Are those things free from being taken then? Because they belong to the culture? They belong to the people who do those things? Nah. They don't. They don't belong to the people who create them. Because they are methods of interaction between people, they're no different than a language. And ask any friend or relative or distant relative who doesn't engage in those particular traditions, who then goes to, say, a holiday party with their, Slovenian family friends or whatever. They're not going to tell these people, you have to wait outside. You can't be part of this. This is our tradition. Stay back. There are very few traditions like that. And those traditions are things that people that typically don't openly engage in anyway. A brisk, for example. Although, you do invite people to go see that. But be that as it may, these are not things that are not for consumption of the public. They are things that are openly shared. This is how we do things. Let us go here and do this thing, and anybody that comes to be with us, we will share this thing with. That opens it up to everybody. So, getting upset because somebody dresses up as a geisha for Halloween is stupid, because it is part of the culture from Japan, say. Primarily historical Japan. There aren't many geishas left. For any number of reasons. But the point I'm making here is that geishas are a thing. They are but they're really a cultural artifact. Nobody should be offended because someone dresses up like a geisha. Because, in all honesty, it's not that deep. It is. It's a cursory examination of a representation of somebody trying to be reminiscent of something. It's much like people dressing up as cowboys. You know, here, great example is pick your stereotypical redneck Southerner with the cowboy hat and the cowboy boots and the jeans, and they're a parody almost of the caballeros, or even the actual ranch hands who move cattle. Cowboy is an Americanization of caballero, which is a horse person. I think, I don't remember the etymology. Spanish wasn't my language. But it's Americanization of caballero, and they were the ranch hands, the people who rode horses, who took care of cattle. But cowboys, as they're represented in Halloween, for example, they're a take on the 50s, 60s, 70s TV show / movie cowboys. Think Back to the Future 2. They're not representative of actual cowboys or people who engage in ranch handing, you know. And the whole they're all white men, so it's okay to allow them to be culturally appropriated. Well, it's okay for everybody to have their culture appropriated. Like I said, it's a shared experience between people. It is not a private club. It is not a Masonic, ceremony of some kind. It is people in the open doing stuff, and that kind of makes it free game for everybody. If I go to Japan and I go to one of the few geisha houses left, and I have the money to pay for the geisha services and have their performance and the ceremonies and all that kind of stuff, I can do that. As a gaijin, I can do that. Because it's open to the public. It is a public performance of the way people do stuff. Dreadlocks, hairstyles in general, but dreadlocks in particular, there's only so much stuff you can do with hair. And the Celts and the Greeks and the North Africans, focusing mostly around Egypt, which is a very culturally diverse place, all were familiar with the style of matted hair, matted long hair. So it is not just a North African or Middle African tradition. If the Celts were doing it, in and about and around the same broadly 1,000-year period as the Greeks and the North Africans. Now the Greeks may have done it first. I don't remember the timeline of the history of dreadlocks, but it's out there somewhere. I came across it at one point. Somebody had written a blog post or something about it, and I had read through it. I believe the Greeks were first, before it made its way into North Africa, which would make sense because they were Mediterranean trading partners, most likely. But the Celts came up with it within 400 years or so of that time period, if I'm not mistaken. Which would seem unlikely, being that they probably were not regular traders with people from the Mediterranean region. But that's it. Now, I don't want to get off I don't want to take the idea that people shouldn't have cultures. I'm just saying that cultural traditions in themselves, while they may have personal meaning, they don't necessarily have any value. And therefore, I don't think that people should be upset or angry or frustrated or offended that somebody takes some aspect of their public performance of the activities within their group and poorly or greatly appropriates some aspect of the culture. Because there is no definition for what parts of culture are okay to do that to. And therefore, dressing up like a geisha should be no different than having a Chinese, yin-yang symbol hanging on my wall. That's part of their culture. But if I take I Ching, if I study I Ching, or if I study Tai Chi or something like that has a tradition in China, then it's not cultural appropriating? Or then is it still cultural appropriating? Wearing a Chinese style jacket, the broad toggles and the multicolored, the cut sleeves and the open collar kind of thing. Is that cultural appropriating? I don't think so. That's just a jacket. I don't care the specific details necessarily, but there's no value in it remaining just within the culture. Because there's not necessarily a value of it being from the culture in the first place. If it's cool, it's cool. If it's not cool, then it's not cool. We should take the parts of stuff that are good and we should use them whenever we feel like. Because we're all in this together. And if you should never be hurt or offended by somebody on behalf of somebody else. And I'm thinking of that woman in the lift ride with the hula girl. I'm sure every one of my subscribers has seen a video about this at some point. And if you haven't, go look it up. The passenger acted extremely offended that this guy had a hula girl on his dash. But that is not... She claimed offense for other people who were not in any way affected by the hula girl on his dash. That's it. So, like, comment, share, subscribe. This is one of my shorter videos. I'm working on trying to get these a little shorter, a little more concise. It helps that this is the umpteenth recording of this, too. I had a really good one before, and right as I was wrapping up, my son came down yelling for me, "Dad!" And instead of editing that one, because I hadn't actually listened to the whole thing, I decided to reshoot it, and that's what you have here. So this one is actually almost a minute shorter, though. So, cool beans. I already said like, comment, share, and subscribe, right? All right, cool. Goodbye, and hello, as always.
If it doesn't,